Welcome to Top Tier Wrestling, your ultimate destination for all things AEW and WWE. Whether you're a hardcore wrestling fanatic or just a casual viewer, we've got you covered with the latest news, in-depth show reviews, and our unfiltered opinions on everything happening in the world of professional wrestling. Join us as we dive into the high-octane action, dramatic storylines, and backstage buzz of AEW and WWE. Get ready to step into the ring with us and stay on top of the wrestling world. This is Top Tier Wrestling. Welcome, everyone, to the Top Tier Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Magnum, with my beautiful co-host, Turbo Dawn. And we are the Top Tier Runners. And on today's episode, we're going to be reviewing WWE Smackdown from October 18th. And let's just go ahead and get into it. Kind of an overall impression just here at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like this episode of SmackDown was good-ish, but not because of much of what happened in the ring. What I mean by that is that it was a lot more of a promo show with only okay to mediocre matches. And, well, I'll just get into it. We open the show with a huge Bloodline segment because they know that's what's carrying the show tonight.
Absolutely.
We have Solo Sikoa come out and he says, Columbia, South Carolina, acknowledge me. And Columbia, South Carolina pretty much said Solo sucks. And he tries to, or he basically does a recap of how Roman can't do anything about his bigger, better, stronger bloodline.
Yeah.
And Jimmy can't do anything about it either. And he goes over to Monday Night Raw and tries to get Jay's help, but Jay don't want nothing to do with it either. So no yeet. And pretty much after mentioning Jay Uso, and this is where the crowd really pops, and this was a surprise for us too.
Yeah.
Jay Uso shows up. I mean, we hear Uso, and everybody's like, "What?" Because it's SmackDown. And Jey Uso makes his way through the crowd and does his entrance, and Solo even backs off and lets him do his whole entrance so that the crowd can yeet. And Jay hops into the ring and says, "What's up, little brother? It's been a minute. I promise I'm not out here to fight you, because at the end of the day, he still cares about you, and he's still his little brother." And he goes on to say, think about what you're doing to the bloodline. Nobody has bigger issues with Roman than I do, but dividing the family like this ain't it. And he says, I left to do my own thing and be my own man, and I won this Intercontinental Championship. So he holds up the championship, and everyone's like, yay! And he goes, yeet. And he goes on to tell Solo, fighting over the Ulafala, though, is not it. That right is earned, not taken, and you know better. But if you want to end Roman's power, then do it. Just don't divide the family while you do it. And Solo's like, are you done wasting my time? You come out here and you yeet. Who said anything about dividing the family? I'm not trying to divide the family. He's trying to unite the family. And stop calling me your little brother. I'm your tribal chief now. And I'll always have a place for you and Roman in my bloodline, but all you have to do is acknowledge me. And then he goes on to say, you see, I don't want you to follow in Jimmy's footsteps because look where that got him. So are you in or out? And Jay's like, look, if what you're saying is true and you want to unite the bloodline, then why do you have to go out and get them? And he's referring to Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa and Jacob. And he says, there's a reason we stayed away from all of them. And then Jacob, who was mean mugging Jey Uso this entire time, Jay looks at him and says, and if he keeps staring at me like that, I'm going to knock his ass out. And, it looks like they're about to get into a tangle. And then Jay says, look, forget it. I'm out. And he says, but know that the next time I see you, Uso, it's going to be different. Yeet. And so we see a point where you and I thought it was going to be a situation where Roman and Jimmy have to convince Jey Uso and I still think to some degree it will be.
Yeah.
But this take on it sort of presents an idea that Jey Uso ends up having a problem with the new bloodline and Solo Sikoa more directly.
Yeah.
Instead of it just being a scenario where Roman and Jimmy have to try and appeal to him to come back. It's also going to be coming from that side where like Solo Sikoa's bloodline pisses Jay off too.
Yeah. I actually think what might happen is before they get together, before the original bloodline gets back together, I think they're gonna have Paul Heyman return. Uh and then I think I don't know which one of these will happen first. Maybe what I'm about to say next will happen first because of the timeline. But I think that the new bloodline, the one under Solo Sikoa's reign, rule, I think they will interfere in the match that Jay has with Breaker and might cost him the belt. Because they can if he can show up on Friday nights, then I don't see why they can't show up on Mondays. Um, so there might be some interference there,
Yeah.
and that might get him looking to get back into whipping some ass on the bloodline side, but still not interested in working with Roman or Jimmy, or maybe there's still some conflict there, and they're gonna need the wise man to
Mhm.
patch that shit up. So I think maybe that's what will take place next or in the coming weeks on SmackDown. I'm sorry,
Well,
on Raw.
on Raw, if I may speculate a notch, I think you're
Mhm.
right. Like, if it's fair for Jay to come to SmackDown, then it's fair for and the Bloodline to go to Raw.
Absolutely.
And if that's the case, then what if Solo sort of adopts a posture of like, look at Jay, all big in the britches because he's the IC champ. Let me show him, let me humble him a bit. And then the like Solo's bullshit bloodline goes and interferes and costs Jay his title in his
Mm-hmm.
match upcoming with Braun Breaker or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And now Jay is like, all right, dude, it's on. I'm
Yeah.
I'm I was trying to stay out of it, but now I have only one goal, which is to thrash your bullshit bloodline,
Right.
you know.
You're just
And
agreeing with what I was saying,
ye
right?
yeah, basically.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think that would be a neat way to go about doing it because then it's it's less of like Roman and Jimmy just having to convince him. It's more like he sees it firsthand the problem that Solo's version is.
Yeah.
And that, as long as there is almost any kind of bloodline, Jay's not going to be able to do his own thing. Like he can try to leave the family,
Exactly.
but the family keeps coming after him.
Yeah. That's what that's the conclusion he's gonna come to, which is he just can't be done with it because there's always gonna be some bullshit. But he still won't be up for teaming up with Roman or Jimmy. And I think it's gonna take Paul to put that together. Then after that, they're gonna need uh some more, at least one or two more people on their side, and then further down the road we got The Rock, who is raising his eyebrows at what Roman is doing as of late. So
Hmm.
yeah, that part of Raw, I'm sorry, SmackDown, I am into. It was great, but we're about to get into it. Honestly, it was the promos for SmackDown that kept it going, and
Yeah.
I mean that's not necessarily a bad thing. I guess they knew that they were going to have a lot of meh matches, and so they had to have something storyline wise that would keep people interested. Maybe that's the case, but I think overall, you know what? We'll talk about it overall when we get to the end there. So yeah, the opening promo, the opening storyline build with the bloodline, I was already engaged. I was already interested, and they couldn't have done that better. Had they had a match that involved these dudes, and it was a really good opener. Like, you know what I mean? Like a great match or a great promo is
Yeah.
nice for an opener. So can't complain about that. What I can
No,
complain about, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
What I can complain about though was the first match of the night.
Yep. The first
DIY,
match of the night.
yeah,
Yep. Go ahead.
DIY versus the Street Profits with B-Fab. Like that freaking matters. No, I'm just playing. And Pretty
You're not wrong.
Deadly.
Yep.
Uh, and there is a YouTuber that we watch that did a really good video about the problem here, and I don't know if we could say the guy's name or not. I'm not really sure how that works, but if I could, I would, because I honestly think that people should take a look at it.
Yeah,
But
I think you can. I don't think it's like a copyright infringement or anything.
okay,
But just for informational purposes, this guy agrees with what we were already thinking, not the other way around.
yeah. So there's a really cool YouTube channel, uh, called The Burial, and this guy, I don't know how new he is or not, but he cuts, like, I mean, man, he tells the truth, and I haven't really heard anything. He's funny, of course, but I haven't really heard anything that he says truthfully, or even in his opinion, that I don't agree with so far. And I mean, I think he said it best here. When you hear DIY versus the Street Profits versus Pretty Deadly, you don't think the winners should be DIY in that particular match. And if you do, you're in the minority. I honestly feel like you're in the minority. DIY, give me something, anything, in the past 2 years that you could think of the DIY has done that has made you go, oh man, these guys are the GOAT. They should have the belts and they should keep the belts for a very long time. Street Profits, please, please. That's a joke. They're a joke.
Yeah.
DIY would wipe the
No,
floor with them. Who thinks that?
I don't know, but I can't agree with them because of the three teams in that match. One, I was excited to see Pretty Deadly actually being able to be in a match instead of like some sort of comedy skit. And the
Yeah,
WWE seems to have remembered that they are a tag team that was really good in NXT and had
yeah.
a lot of fire behind them when they came to the main roster.
Like, are they
That
being punished because they're funny? Is that it? Can they not be
or
funny and also
or
good
have
in
they
the
been
ring?
afflicted with injuries or something?
Yeah, like, what are we missing here? What are we missing that would keep Pretty Deadly out of the ring but put DIY in there on multiple occasions within a month?
Yeah.
Like, we haven't
So
seen, this is the first time we've seen Pretty Deadly in about 2 months in the ring.
yeah, in a while actually. So for me, I'm looking at these three teams and I'm like, the Street Profits are amazing. Pretty Deadly are good as well. They're both
Yeah,
funny, but also good in the ring when they're allowed to be. And then you've got DIY, which Johnny Gargano looks like somebody who would be like if you go into WWE 2K series video game and you're going to create a wrestler, Johnny Gargano is the default wrestler before you've actually made
yeah.
any changes. Like he
He's
is so
fucking,
freaking
yes.
generic and boring.
Jimmy
And
Generic.
then you've got Tommaso Ciampa, who I guess did great things back in NXT, but since he's been on the main roster in WWE, he has had precisely one opportunity to look badass, and that was his match against Gunther. Everything else has been like pitiful. So
Yeah,
if Tommaso Ciampa is this like fantastic wrestler, he keeps getting used in such a way that makes him look pitiful. Like honestly, Tommaso Ciampa is brought down by his association with Johnny Gargano, not up. Um,
sorry about it, but it's true.
so DIY for me, and I would imagine a lot of people, is the freaking worst option of those three teams to be showcased. Like they're the most boring.
Yeah.
I
And
would
if
have
I,
rather seen. Now, just to cut to the end on this match, DIY wins by a pinfall, and it was in a weird kind of a way. Like, apparently, Pretty Deadly and Street Profits, or at least the Street Profits, lost track of who the legal competitor was in the ring with Pretty Deadly. So, right at the end, I think it's Montez is pinning one member of Pretty Deadly, and Gargano is pinning another. And because Street Profits had the wrong member of Pretty Deadly, DIY wins. And I mean, some part of me has to know that, or has to think they know that DIY really isn't that over.
They
Because
have to.
DIY were the guys that got their butts kicked and the Street Profits stepped in like a couple weeks ago. So it's like, they're not who we want to see. And then tonight, or on this SmackDown, you had DIY win like by almost like technical fluke instead of, because it's not believable that they would do it any other way.
Yeah.
So I just don't understand this push for DIY. I don't know who wants to see it. Like, I don't think they have very many fans. When the Street Profits and Pretty Deadly are vastly superior teams, like I would have preferred to see either the Street Profits or Pretty Deadly end up moving on in this number one contenders match.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
And
so
to go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so far this number one contenders match for the people that are going to challenge for the titles isn't looking that promising, and it's like, maybe that's the point, right? Like, I don't think the belts are going anywhere off of the bloodline because it's wrapped up in the story, right? So you might as well, I guess, throw the crap teams at them because they're not going to
Yeah.
win.
I'm gonna be perfectly honest. I'd much rather see people that I want to see in the ring over DIY in the ring doing the same thing they do every time they get in the ring. Um, and using that logic with DI, like we know that they're not gonna win anyway. All right, cool. I feel you on that. So would I have liked to have seen Street Profits get in the ring and with Bloodline and again almost eke out a victory? You might be right. I might not want to see that again. But I would have loved to have seen Pretty Deadly. Pretty Deadly would have been great in the ring. They are 10 times better than DIY could ever hope to be. They have more
Yeah,
personality than DIY
yeah,
could ever hope to have. They are
and that,
more entertaining than DIY
yeah,
has ever been in
yep,
the ring for me. When DIY was a thing,
hmm hmm
when they were good, I was too busy watching the women in NXT. Like I was too busy watching Bailey and thinking, man, she looks really freaking good. I was too busy watching like good matches. DIY when they were a thing, I wasn't interested then. So now you try to bring them back and make them interesting, and I'm still not freaking interested. And I don't know a lot of people that
mm
are. And I'm not
no,
really sure why they keep getting this push. How many times? If you say, okay, cool. Well, we know that whoever goes against the bloodline for these belts, we already know they aren't going to win. And we got 3 tag teams here. We know Street Profits have done this a lot, and maybe people are tired of seeing that. Then, guys, I gotta ask you, what do you think we feel about DIY doing the same freaking thing? And you gave them the belts. You gave them the belts. Why can't the Street Profits have these freaking belts yet? And before the Street Profits could even get the belts, before they even could have the opportunity to compete for them, you put them right back on the clumsy shoulders of the new bloodline. Huh?
yep.
So you needed those belts for something? I mean, I don't, because let me tell you, they don't compete for shit for those belts. I've seen maybe 2 stupid matches. So why do we need to give those dudes the belts already? If you're trying to make them look dominant, you fucking didn't do it before you put the belts on them. You
Oh, you
didn't.
mean the Gorillas of Destiny, right?
Yes, yeah,
Like
yeah,
when you're
yes, yeah,
saying they, yeah,
yes. That's what I'm talking about. Because those are so now we gotta watch DIY go against. Well, we later on we'll talk about who they're going to be going against because another yawn. Um, But so now we're about to watch another boring match for somebody to win the opportunity to lose again because we know these belts aren't freaking going anywhere. And I have to say, if that's the case, and we know that's the case, I would have much rather have seen a new team be in that situation, and that team would have been Pretty Deadly. And I mean, because what
Yeah.
would it have hurt at that point? Do we really need to give DIY yet another freaking shot? Do we?
No,
How many times
no,
have we freaking seen this in the past 2 or 3 months?
I don't think DIY was worthy of the first shot. Like, I just don't think they're very entertaining at all. They are
Yeah.
absolutely yawn worthy whenever they're on screen.
And it's killing
Like,
me that they even gave them the belts to begin with. What the? Austin Theory and Grayson Waller, they no longer have their belts, and I haven't seen them. Where are they?
oh, they're coming up. They're coming up in the match that you were referring to that is another yawn.
Yeah. So why? Oh, why? Why? Oh, why are we doing this yet again with DIY? Yeah, that rhymed sorta.
Yeah, I sort of
Basically, I just don't get it. That's my point. I just don't get
I
why we're
don't
doing this.
I don't disagree with you, but I think it's because by sticking the tag belts, the SmackDown tag belts
Yeah.
on
Right.
the Bloodline, pretty much the entire tag scene on SmackDown is in free fall. Like, it's just totally stalled out. Like, what are we
Again.
gonna do? What are we gonna do? We're gonna have the Street Profits go against the Bloodline one more time to just not win. At a
Yeah.
certain point, you're just burying the Profits. I think we're past that point, as a matter of fact.
I think we
Um,
are. Yeah.
and you could have had Pretty Deadly do it, but I think there's a reason they didn't, and it's not a good reason. It's actually a really lame and boring reason, but it has to do with the match coming up and the winner of that match and who they want DIY to wrestle.
Yeah.
Um, and so this was kind of a Lulu. It wasn't a terrific match. I mean, it wasn't the worst match, but it was nothing to write home about. And being unexcited that DIY is in it and even less excited that they won it, it's just kind of a no for me, dog, kind of a
Yeah.
situation. Like, whatever. I also don't think there's any. I have a hard time believing that there's actual stakes in this number one contenders thing because, again, I don't believe that the Bloodline are going to lose those tag titles.
No.
So this whole thing is kind of a wash.
Yep.
It's not a good place over on SmackDown's tag side right now.
No.
Again,
No. No.
because the Bloodline is once again hoarding gold, which makes everybody else buried by default.
Yep.
Um, that said, I think that's about as much as that match warrants discussing.
Yeah.
Moving on from
Get
there,
more belts. More freaking belts.
yeah,
Seriously. This is
absolutely.
ridiculous.
WWE needs more belts to struggle for if they're going to keep
This is
tying them into
yeah.
these long running storylines so that
This is
nobody else can
ridiculous.
compete for anything.
As much as I loved the Usos, they're probably one of the best tag teams of my generation. I do not begrudge them this title, but having the belts sit on a tag team for freaking a year and a half, and you don't have any other belts for anybody, that shit gets played out.
Yeah.
So I mean, honestly, what are these men competing for? And one more thing, I just want to say one more thing. I love
Go
the
ahead.
Street Profits, but if you aren't going to do anything with them, then what are we doing with Montel? I love both of these dudes, but you can't tell me that Montel isn't ready right now to be a top
Montez.
Montez. I'm sorry, I keep calling him Montel, guys,
Yeah.
because it's a joke whenever we play the wrestling game. I like to talk a
Call
lot
him
of
Montel.
smack. Yeah, I like to talk a lot of smack, and one of them is to get names wrong or to make fun of their names, and I always go Montel Jordan with him. I'm sorry, Montez. That's my problem is if I keep making that joke, the name that I joke about becomes the name of the person. But Andrade much. But Montez, you can't tell me that he's not a competitor right now. You can't tell me that he's not a singles ready to compete right now. But what would he compete for? There ain't no belts. There's like 3 belts floating around, and
Yeah.
in a sea of sharks. There's like
Well, and it's
so
particularly obnoxious because we have watched Montez Ford has always been an excellent athlete, but even he is getting even better with each passing
yeah,
day. And
yeah,
Angelo Dawkins has done nothing but improve his physical condition over the past couple of years. Like
yep,
he has dropped weight, he's getting cut. They cut good promos, they're working hard in the ring. I don't know what more is left for them to do, but they would be better off, honestly, moving to Raw where they could actually compete for the belts than to be
Yeah, for
stuck on
something.
SmackDown where, the Bloodline has claimed these belts. And so good luck
When
for your
when
entire
we
division now.
That's right. When we even heard that they were going to SmackDown, we said what we're saying right now. Great. Great. We
Hmm.
wanted to separate them. We wanted one group to be in Raw and the other group to be in SmackDown because we knew eventually we would get to this point where the Bloodline would once again or would have the belts, and they do, the tag team belts, good or not, two thumbs up or not, they got the freaking belts. And because it's the bloodline, those belts ain't going no dang on where for quite some time. That's right, dang on.
Mm-mm.
No dang on where for quite some time. Which means what? The Street Profits are left fighting for scraps. Fighting in matches where they know they aren't even going to win. And even if they were, the inevitable outcome is you don't get these freaking belts yet again. So at what point do we say maybe you're just not good enough? And is that true? Hell
It
no, it's
isn't true.
not.
No,
Hell no,
it's
it's
not.
not.
And I could see somebody hearing that and saying, well, is it really any better over on Raw? The big faction over there is the Judgment Day. Is it after
Is
Rhea
it?
and Damian left? One. And two, the Judgment Day isn't so like untouchable in the same storyline way that the Bloodline is,
They are,
that
yeah.
somebody couldn't go over there and beat, you know, JD McDonough and is it
Finn.
him and Finn? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
him and Finn. So I could see the Street Profits actually winning that match, and then they could get into a proper feud, and then the belts could circulate around. And
Yeah.
Finn and McDonough could just be another set of really strong competitors. And Finn and McDonough can out wrestle like circles around the weak sauce that are the Gorillas of Destiny. I'm just completely unimpressed with Tomatonga and Tongaloa. Like, they have yet to show me anything that makes me think they're worth two squirts of piss, to be
JD,
perfectly honest.
JD and Finn
Um,
Balor could spank DIY too. Like honestly, I think that they could win that match quite
yeah.
easily.
Well, and that's the difference I'm trying to point out, is that,
Yeah.
like, the Judgment Day, Finn and McDonough are actually good enough competitors that they just seem like they could actually be. Whereas the Gorillas of Destiny are just like, the story requires that they have those belts. They
Yep.
themselves have not risen to meet that expectation. Like, both of them as wrestlers, I'm just woefully unimpressed by.
Yep.
And so it's really, really sad that those belts are stuck not only in the Bloodline storyline, like into perpetuity, but they're
Yeah.
stuck on two guys that I don't think are that good. Like, they're
Yeah.
not better than Pretty Deadly. They're not better than the Prophets. They're not even better than Di freaking Y. I mean, that's what's like. It all adds up to, for the tag division on SmackDown, it's bad.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the long and the short of it.
I
Probably the
know.
long
Yeah.
of it,
That was the long of it.
as to why so many things are wrong with the tag division in SmackDown right now, and
I
why this
Yeah.
triple threat number one contender stuff has absolutely no, like, I don't believe there's actually any stakes here, and this is
There is
just
none.
like,
No.
this is for show. I mean, I get wrestling is all for show, but this is like extra for show. Like, it's not
Yeah.
going to go anywhere.
With that being said, though, I'm just annoyed that we all know that this is just for show. I would have preferred a much more amusing viewing. I would have preferred something
Hmm.
else more to see than DIY versus the lames that are coming later on for these belts. I honestly, but yeah, whatever. That's
Yeah.
my opinion. And
And we're
now
going to
we
end up talking about it more because there's a second number one contender match to come.
yeah,
So we can get into it even more there.
yeah,
But moving on from match one, we then cut to Roman Reigns and Jimmy Uso arriving at the arena. And Roman is approached, like, Roman and Jimmy are talking for a bit. And then Jay walks up.
yeah.
And Roman
And I
tells
think
Jay Uso that he's proud of him. And Jay pretty much just, like, snorts at him and then walks away. Um,
I think he
and
said
Roman and
no yeet. Didn't he? Did he say no yeet or something?
I think he did say no. You're probably
And
right
then
there, but he walks away, and Roman pretty much says to Jimmy, "Look, man, it ain't gonna work. I told you. And Jimmy just sort of looks disappointed, and he looks at Roman, and he looks where Jay walked off, and he's just kind of got a defeated or annoyed look on his face.
Yeah.
And then we are taken to a sequence with Nick Aldis informing Nia Jax that she'll apparently Tiffany Stratton is out sick tonight, and so Nia Jax is like, "Well, I guess I'm not gonna have a match." And Nick is like, "Well, now hold up, you just need to find a different partner." And she's like, "Who?" And that's when, like, from I guess 2 inches off of where the camera's frame was, Candice LeRae and I don't know the gal who's with her all the time, whose name is escaping me right now.
Yeah, it left me too.
Um, because they haven't been on TV in a long time. I wouldn't, I barely can remember Candice LeRae, the Poison Pixie or whatever. But she walks in and offers to be Nia's tag team partner, and I'm like, well, there goes all hope for this being a good match. And Aldous
Yeah.
proceeds to make the match official, and Nia says Candice better hold up her end of the bargain or she'll end her, and it'll take her less than
Hartwell.
3 seconds.
Indy
Which the less
Hartwell.
than Indy Hartwell, that's it. And the less than 3 seconds thing, or actually, she doesn't say 3 seconds. She says it'll take her less than 3 minutes. Um, is a reference to the fact that Candice LeRae is apparently the new women's WWE Speed Champion or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, so
And uh yeah, so apparently this is all happening because Britt Baker is sick. Oh, sorry. Uh I I meant Tiffany Stratton is out sick
huh,
and she can't wrestle. So, there you go. Yeah, I did
yeah,
it. I'm being snarky about it. She might be
yeah,
sick. She might be, but I'm just
and
saying.
I can already tell you that that's a downgrade. Like, you might not like Tiffany Stratton as a character, but as a wrestler, she's fantastic.
She's a great
So I
wrestler,
would have
yeah.
been much more excited about a match with, her as Nia's partner than I am anything that Candice LeRae is going to do in that ring. So
Yeah.
that's already looking like it's not going to be so great. And spoiler, it isn't. Second match of the night is Piper Niven versus Last Legend with Chelsea Green in Piper's corner and Jakara Jackson in Lash's. And this actually might have been match of the night for me.
Yeah, it
Um,
was.
because we get to see Lash Legend go absolutely off on Piper Niven.
Yeah.
And this was a fantastic match.
Yeah, it was. Piper sold the moves well. Lash looked like a beast. Like um she looked like quit playing, put these ladies in the WWE women's division right now. They don't need to be in NXT. Let's get it popping and get them in the division like right now.
Yeah.
Not now, but right now. She looked
And
great. And her and
yeah,
Piper, I think, worked really well together.
they did. That's what I was going to say is that while Lash Legend, this was really about showing off Lash Legend,
It
Piper
was,
actually
yeah,
really put on a good match with her. Like, both women did very well in this match.
yeah,
And long story short, after a real, like, kind of powerhouse slobber knocker between these two women, Lash Legend shows off just how powerful she is by straight up picking up Piper Niven and putting her on the back as part of, like, the gory face buster finisher that she uses, and just slams her into the mat. Like,
yeah,
at that point, it is sealed that Lash Legend is one of the most powerful powerhouse women, like, that this roster's ever seen.
absolutely.
And uh during the match, obviously Jakara Jackson and Chelsea Green got into it at ringside a little bit. But I think Jakara actually got the better of Chelsea, ended up hurling her into the ringside barricade pretty hard. Uh, but yeah, this was an absolute showcasing for I don't know if I should call them Metaphor or Meta 2. I guess their name is Metaphor, but like the
Yeah,
four of them aren't there. This is just Lash and Jakara. But Lash and Jakara are looking fantastic. Like, this is, I think, the second big showing for them, like where they actually were performing in the ring, not
Yeah,
counting interfering in the match between Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair versus Damage Control. And they look fantastic every time we've seen them now. Like they look really, really good. Like they put on a heck of a match with Bianca and Jade until it was over. I mean, but it was a slobber knocker the whole way there.
yeah,
They absolutely laid out Io Sky when Damage Control was going after the belts, and then here in this singles contest between Lash Legend and Piper Niven, Lash looked like an absolute beast. Like she was super strong. And so I'm with you. Bring these women to the main roster yesterday.
yep,
Like
yep,
these two will be an absolute asset to the women's division, especially the tag division on the women's side.
yeah.
So more of that, please. So yeah,
Please,
I think for me, this is probably my match of the night.
yeah. I think it's the match of the night for me too. Um, I think I said all I honestly needed to say. Uh, Lash looked good, and her and Piper worked very well together. Um, I don't know if these ladies have a history of matches with each other, but they seem to work like they've done this before with each other, and it was good. And Piper didn't look like a slouch. Legend damn
No.
sure didn't look like a slouch. And there was very little interference to make it look like one was uh getting an easier time than the other, if that makes any sense. They
Yeah.
both put on a banger, I think.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
my
No,
only my
I
only problem is I wish it was just a tad bit longer, which seems to be the statement that I make whenever there's a good women's match around. I just wish it was a little bit longer.
mm, I don't me
You
personally with this one,
thought that
I
one
don't
went well?
necessarily. I think it was as long as it needed to be. I think it
Okay.
got the story across because, and I say that in I normally I agree, and there have been
Hmm.
several matches where that has been the case. But this
Yeah.
one, I feel like it got done when it needed to get done without overly padding it. And I mentioned the overly padding because coming up, we're going to talk about some stuff that happens on Collision in AEW and their Battle of the Belts. And there's a few matches
Oh
in there that are
God.
padded out for the full like 20 minutes that like the first 10 to 15 aren't worth watching because it's just
Oh.
boring. So this match I think was well paced. Both women looked really strong. Um, and that's the upside. This was a really good case where both women still looked strong and performed well, but Lash still looked more dominant, which was the point you were trying to make. But it didn't bury Piper into the floor so hard that she can never come back.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
both women got to look strong, and you still were able to convey that Legend looked stronger. And that's a
Okay.
great thing. Like that is a lesson that they need to take to heart. Don't bury somebody. We get that someone's got to lose, but make it a good match so that it doesn't look like one got completely buried by the other.
Yeah. Don't bury your superstars. Don't do it. That for the same reason that I feel like there needs to be more belts. I would say that there needs to be less burying of superstars. Um,
Yeah, that's
you
that's
know,
what you
there,
got local talent for.
that's you took the words right out of my mouth. There's local talent, man. Like give them some time, give them a check, and then have them get squashed by your superstar. Like honestly, don't have somebody else out there that you're cutting a big check for that you've spent time convincing the audience is a dominant, competent wrestler. Don't then get them in the ring with somebody and then squash them. Why would you
Yep.
do that? Why would you do that?
That's
Where is oh my god, the guy that used to be with Imperium? Where is he now?
Oh, Vinci? Yeah.
Why what because you,
Yeah.
you freaking spent money, time and money. You cut promos for this guy and then get him in the ring and squash him. And then
Yeah,
I
the
guess
way
you thought if you did it twice, but then the second time He gets his comeuppance by beating the guy after the match. If you thought that was enough, where
Yeah.
is he then?
No, as near as I can tell, he got like that whole angle murdered him because they did that twice, and then neither he nor Cruz have been seen on SmackDown since.
Yeah, and not
So,
only
like, you brought him back to just bury the heck out of the guy.
like
I don't,
that,
yeah,
it feels like that was a personal attack on that dude. Honestly, it feels like they were just mad at him for some shit, and they were thought, well, guess what you're gonna do, buddy? Like I feel like they just basically gave him a false sense of comfort, and they were like, hey, don't worry about it. We're about to cut a promo for you. We're about to give you this brand new repackaging. We're gonna bring you back, and you're gonna fuck. It's gonna be amazing. And honestly, I was hyped for it. I'm like, oh, okay, they're bringing that guy back. I'm ready for it. I'm ready. And then they bring him back, and he loses quicker than I've seen any dude lose this year. And I'm
yeah.
thinking to Apollo Crews, by the way. And guys, I'm
Hmm.
not trying to be mean or anything, but when was the last time you saw Apollo Crews win any damn thing, especially by himself? He is usually
No,
the guy that gets pinned. He is usually the guy whenever he's with Corbin. He's the one that gets pinned. He's the one that technically loses the match for those two. Instead, that's the guy that you have beat. Man, you don't think that? I mean, maybe it's just me, but that feels like a personal attack, like a huge screw you to this dude. And I'm not
yeah,
sure why Vinci is getting it like that. But now where
yep,
is he? And now where is Apollo?
yeah. I
Like
mean,
you
there's a
used him
reason.
just for that. That's almost like an
Yeah,
insult for some
there's a
reason.
reason we would jokingly call Apollo Crews Apollo Lose. I mean, the
Yeah,
guy just always loses until he goes against Vinci and then he wins. So not only does Vinci like get a short match with a quick burial, but it's a short match with a quick burial by like the guy lowest on the totem pole. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
It's like
So it's
Akira
like,
came out and whipped his ass.
yeah, Akira Kurosawa. Yeah, yep,
Yeah. And even Akira at this point, I would say has a better totem pole stance than Cruz.
he does because Alpha Academy with Otis and not Renee, Maxine Dupree, are like that whole faction is super over. Like the crowd really likes them,
Yeah.
regardless of the fact that they're not necessarily winning matches. But that
So yeah,
doesn't necessarily extend to other people on the roster that are losing matches and just getting buried. Like
yeah.
Vinci and Cruz are super not over with anyone at this point. You know, like they
No.
made sure of that.
Yeah. So but we digress. we have
Indeed,
a we have a lot of good stuff to say today. I'm here for it. But I think the last match we covered was Piper Niven uh
and
and
Lash. Yep,
Lash Legend, and honestly that was the match of the night, in my opinion. And I know we're not
yeah,
even
mine
done
too.
yet. We're not even done yet, but honestly it was the match of the night.
Yep,
Um After that I think we had a excuse me, another backstage uh cut with Roman in the locker room. Yeah. And basically he brought up the wise man, which is interesting because I really feel like that's, I mean, it's coming, right? But I'm sure other people are coming, but we all know that Paul Heyman's coming soon. I would assume because the band's coming back together. Um but Roman mentions the wise man. He says that he's not the wise man. He's talking to Jimmy. Um and Jimmy says that he needs to talk to Jay. Uh, but Jay made up his mind, and Roman says that he gave Jimmy gave it a shot.
yep. He tried to
But
do things Jimmy's way.
yeah, but now he's gonna do things his own way, and he's gonna fix the issue uh tonight. And we're all thinking, how is he gonna do that? Jimmy's thinking the same thing. And Roman says he's going to acknowledge Solo. Mic drop. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
everyone's
was
like,
like,
"Wait, what?" What? Roman's gonna acknowledge Solo as the new tribal chief? No
Yeah,
way.
yeah, and I'm thinking, man, I don't know about that, but we'll see. Um, and then after that, we had a Cody Rhodes promo. Uh, and he came out, right? He came out. He was like in the ring. It wasn't like him backstage or nothing.
Cody? Yeah, he
Yeah,
he did the whole adrenaline in my soul. So
yeah,
yeah, all of
yeah.
it. The whole walk to the ring that Cody
Yeah,
always does.
and he comes out again like a politician, and he does the handshakes and the baby kissing and the high fiving and the yes we cans and the holding signs and signing babies. Um, and then uh he's talking about the people at the very top, the very back of the arena, and wants to make sure that they are having a good time, and he wants to say hi to them. And then he's just pointing at people in the audience, like in varying distances away from the ring, and saying hi to them. And people are, screaming and I don't know, hugging each other. I don't know what they're doing, but apparently they're thrilled because he's pointing and gesturing at them, and they're losing their shit. Um, and then he goes into his spiel. A very wise individual recently said to him that when it comes to the pantheon of top men and top women in professional wrestling, who would be the next leader, he said that the next one doesn't always look like the last one. It's Cody's been thinking about quite a bit lately, and okay. But in regards to this Crown Jewel Championship, he says it's not about the next one; it's about the last one. It's about who's going to be the first one. And that listen, he said it, not me. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, this
So
particular promo was exceptionally long-winded,
yeah,
and it seemed to me that Cody wanted to try and give a super long-winded explanation about, if you're going to be the top of the top in this industry, which apparently is what the crown jewel is trying to represent, right? It's the
apparently,
champion of champions.
yeah.
And he
Uh,
said, he has his reasons for it. And long story short, he wants to find out his reason, by the way, is his daughter. And he could have just said that, but he's like, my reason is about 3 foot tall, and I need her to know that when my bones turn to dust, my name is attached to this
oh my
title as its first
lord!
champion. And
Like,
so
I don't.
he
Why do
is.
you need her to know that?
Well, the long story short, which was way too overly long and way too wordy, was that for him, it's about the legacy of the Rhodes name. And he wants everyone to know that he reached the top of the mountain, especially his daughter. He could have just said it like that, and it would have been
Yeah.
great. Instead, he went over the river and through the woods and around the planet twice and finally got there. And then the last part of his sentiment is like, you've heard my reasons. Now I would like to ask next Friday on SmackDown, the World Heavyweight Champion Gunter to stand in this ring. And I would like to ask him what his reasons for all of this are.
Why?
And then he was like, and I would like to look him in the eyes and say, hey, champ, what do you want to talk about? And that was
Why?
just exclusively Cody Rhodes trying to hit his catchphrase. I don't know why. I guess they're trying to build heat for it. But the problem I have here is that you've already kind of had a face to face with Gunter. And to be
And
perfectly
that's
honest,
enough heat.
I don't know that there's a whole lot more for you two to say. I mean, it's reason enough that you want to be the champion of champions. I mean, Gunter has been nothing but gold hungry. He wants to sit at the top of that food chain as the champion.
Yeah.
And everybody knows it. We don't need you to hop into the ring and long-windedly find a way to get him to say that. So
Yeah.
I really don't understand. Like, this was a very long-winded and boring promo from Cody Rhodes, and it might have been one of the most politician-y ones he's done. Because,
Oh
like, I mean,
gosh.
from the beginning, he was like, I would just like to say before my remarks, we have an unbelievably sized crowd this evening. And it's like, okay,
I'm.
we get it. WWE needs to brag about their crowds so that AEW can feel bad tomorrow, I guess. I don't know.
I
Um,
honestly, yes. Yeah. For me, for me, them talking about the size of the crowd and whatnot is the equivalent of AEW every time a wrestler comes out talking about how AEW is where the best go to wrestle. Like, like Jesus, I get it. I freaking get it. Can we just see a
Hmm.
match, please? And Cody, I mean, when I started talking about his opener, you heard me. It was very political, and this is probably the most political that it has ever been.
Yeah.
He came out in his preacher suit, and he cut another baby kissing, uh, t-shirt signing promo. And it's like, but this one was uh, damn near almost
Yeah.
incoherent in some places.
And I
Uh,
mean,
y-
if you are a politician, those things I think matter. If you are trying to get to the point of you champ wanting to be the crown jewel champ, it really, really was long winded and super, super not interesting.
yeah,
For him to, I mean, this was on par with Braun Breakers over the river and through the woods to get around to I want my Intercontinental belt back. This was over the river and through the woods to I want to be the crown jewel champion because I want to leave a legacy of roads at the top.
yeah,
I mean, man. So, whew, this was not one of Cody's best promos.
was not.
And
No,
more to the point, I don't think we need any more reason to want to see Gunter versus Cody Rhodes, let alone
no.
another face off.
Yeah, we don't need it. Like
But
everything that their face off, the first one was good. It left it at a stance where I'm like, okay, cool. Then I'm ready to see this. I'm ready to see how this match
yeah,
is gonna go. That's all that needed to happen. But it's almost like somebody told him, "Hey, we need you guys to do another promo because we don't have a match for this particular segment. We need you guys to
yeah.
waste 7 minutes."
And
Uh, uh,
or it's almost like the last promo happened on Raw, so I guess SmackDown needs a turn, you
oh
know?
my
And
god.
it's like,
Hey,
does it?
well then
Do,
do
do
what
you
you
think
did.
that
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, do you think the people that watch Raw then do not watch SmackDown? Like
Yeah.
most of the people that are interested in WWE watch most of the product. Um,
What they could do is just replay the conversation that they had on
yeah, which
SmackDown.
they will do
Like
anyway.
yeah, like they would have done for the promo that Roman and Cody cut in that field, the
In
arena
the
that they
football
were at.
field,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, just do that. I'm not understanding. Like, do you guys not have the tape anymore? Would you lose it? Like the first moon landing? Stop it. Get some help. Freaking
yeah.
just replay it.
So, I don't want to be overly harsh with Cody, but this promo just seemed to meander, and it's to a purpose that I don't necessarily understand. I feel like it's just asking for a big rehash of something we've already seen
Yeah.
in the build up to Crown Jewel. And so, okay. And this is on top of the fact that they keep burning airtime showing off the Crown Jewel thing having to be like ushered by guards because it's apparently made of 4,000 trillion emeralds and diamonds and everything else. And I'm thinking, who
Yeah.
would he, if that's the case, who would actually want to be the Crown Jewel champion?
I don't know.
Because trying to carry that belt with you anywhere would just be a nightmare if it's being pitched that it needs like an entire security team to move this thing because it's worth like a million billion trillion dollars or something.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, then he ain't going to be able to carry that anywhere. Like security at the airport's going to be terrible. Security at the ring at the arena is going to be like a nightmare to deal with like this.
Yeah.
So
Seriously.
I just don't know what they're shooting for here. Like I get grand spectacle, but then it also has to make it make sense, and
Yeah.
giving them a belt that has to be shipped like it's the Mona Lisa from one museum to another one in the world.
Yeah.
Like a friend of mine was an art handler, and we're not even talking about paintings that are at that level, but just like Monet's and things like that. And the amount of security and personnel involved in making sure that ships correctly and safely is insane. And the WWE is showing us that they apparently believe that this belt needs that same level. And it's like, this is going to be impossible to travel town to town with. Like,
Yeah.
that thing should
Seriously.
just stay in Saudi Arabia and only be defended in Saudi Arabia with the Crown Jewel, event because of that. Um,
Yep.
But I digress. I just really think that Cody Rhodes took a lot of SmackDown time here to say very, very little, but used a lot of words to do it. And it's to have another face off with Gunther when I think that's not really necessary either. So I don't know. This was not like that was filler. I feel it was just
Yeah.
really, really long, and you could have stuck another match in there somewhere. Um, and then we come to Kevin Owens cutting a promo out of what looks like essentially it's the idea of maybe a YouTuber sitting filming in his car because it's Kevin Owens in his car filming like a YouTuber.
Yeah.
And he more or less says, I've been in the WWE for about 10 years or more, and there's been lots of up and downs. And he says he doesn't think things have ever felt as bad as they do right now because he's got WWE officials telling him to stay home and not come to work, not come to SmackDown where I belong. And because what I did to Cody Rhodes after Bad Blood, it just seems so unfair and ridiculous. Now, here's the thing, right? Like, they obviously didn't want you to stay home and not come to work because they gave you this time to cut this promo out of your car. So, I mean, there's obviously a disconnect there. This is clearly a sanctioned thing with SmackDown. But that notwithstanding, I still don't feel like Kevin Owens in this promo ends up telling us exactly what it is that he took issue with Cody Rhodes. Like, he keeps suggesting that Cody Rhodes turned on them or on him, but he has yet to make that case. And then he goes on to use this promo to talk about how butthurt he is that Randy Orton apparently chose Cody over him,
Yeah.
and that really breaks his heart. And that, with everything happening like it is right now and the disrespect shown to him by the WWE and Randy breaking his trust, he really doesn't know if or when he'll come back.
Yeah.
Okay, but none of us in the audience still actually know what your reasons for ambushing Cody Rhodes at his tour bus were either. Like, you've had two opportunities sort of now to kind of quickly spit out what the deal is. And this one especially, you had like, I don't know, what, 10 minutes sitting in your
Yeah.
car to actually explain the situation, and instead just sort of bitched and moaned. So
Yeah.
I don't know what was expected to be accomplished with this particular promo. Um,
I'm
are
not
you
sure.
suggesting? Go
Maybe
ahead.
they're planning to move him or something. Move him to Raw, so that Jay could get to SmackDown. I think we talked about that, you and I, before,
Yeah.
off of
Yep.
off of mic. But I think you brought that up, so I'm
Yeah.
agreeing with you. Maybe
Yeah.
they're gonna do something like that.
Well, because inevitably they're going to need Jay to come over from Raw, right?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
that's inevitable. And which that also means he's going to have to lose his title. So predict that coming very soon. Because, he can't bring that with him. It's a Raw title.
Yeah.
Um, And of course, in keeping with things, if they're going to take a superstar from Raw, they're going to have to give a superstar to Raw. And I think we said in a previous podcast, our likeliest pick for that is Kevin Owens. And I
Yeah.
think that's what they're setting up for. Although with this little extra drama, they're trying to make it sound like, oh, is he gonna jump ship and go to AEW? Nah, at most he'll jump ship and go to Raw. That's what I think
Yeah.
is happening here. Um, and then we move on from that promo to a backstage where Randy Orton is confronting Nick Aldis and telling him he needs to get his hands on Kevin Owens. And Nick Aldis
Yeah.
is like, we can't do that. And Randy's like, no, you're not hearing me. I need to have that match. And he
Lots of
says, yeah,
promos, guys.
I can't do that right now. And Randy's like, I'm not asking you for permission. I want a match with Kevin Owens. And Nick is like, the decision was made from people above me. I'm not saying I won't. I'm saying I cannot. And Randy's like, oh, okay, well, I guess I know who I need to talk to. I don't know who that is, but
Nor I.
it was just sort of a really weird back and forth of like, do it. No, I can't. Do it. I mean it. No, I can't. Do it. I'm not really asking you, even though I'm asking you, but you do it. And all this being like, oh, I can't. It comes from above me. So it was okay.
Yeah.
Um,
So we'll see who that is. Apparently, I guess they're,
yeah.
you know.
And that brings us to our third match for the night, which is the debut of the Motor City Machine Guns versus Los Garza of Legado del Fantasma and A Town Down in a triple threat number one contenders match, the second
Yeah.
of the night.
Yeah, and we
And
this is the group that we thought was going to be the Viking Raiders, but or the War Raiders now I think is what they're called.
yeah, the week
But they
before when
debut. Yeah,
yeah,
they made their debut on Raw.
Raw.
So we were.
Yep.
I certainly was incorrect. Thought I thought very much so that it would be them coming on SmackDown. But I didn't know
Yeah.
that both shows were gonna debut new another tag team. So had I known that, maybe, but I would have never guessed that Motor City would have been
The
a
Motor City
group.
Machine Guns.
Yeah,
Yeah.
would have never
Yeah.
thought it was gonna be them.
And
And
I know that they
mhm.
are trying to hype the Motor City Machine Guns through the roof, but I'm not really impressed with them. Like like maybe these guys were hot topics like a decade ago in the indie scene, but they're not big. They didn't come across as particularly charismatic. They're not super attractive. I don't see the appeal. And then I watched the match and I was like, well, maybe they'll show me something that blows my mind. Nope, sure didn't. So this was also another sort of like throwaway match where I guess they just wanted to debut the Motor City Machine Guns. And
Yeah,
for anyone who is going to be shocked and amazed and completely surprised, the Motor City Machine Guns won this match. I know.
yeah.
Amazing that they
What?
debuted and won the match. So
Yeah,
La Garza and A Town end up doing the job to the Motor City Machine Guns, and this was not a particularly interesting match. I mean, it
no.
just really wasn't. I can't think of a single thing that I saw in ring that kind of blew my mind. Where I was like, "Wow, those guys are amazing." From anyone, nothing from A Town Down or Los Garza or the Motor City Machine Guns. This was just a match, and
I
it wasn't
think.
particularly noteworthy, other
Yeah,
than the debut of the Motor City Machine Guns. Which I guess if you're a huge fan of theirs, then this
yeah.
match did all of the things for you. But if you're like us, who hadn't really ever heard of these guys, and
We've
upon
seen it one
first
other
brush are
time.
not especially impressed with these guys, then it didn't do anything for you.
We had seen Motor City one other time.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think maybe once in AEW, and we
yeah,
were unimpressed
and
then.
unimpressed. Then that's words, mouth taken. Um, yeah, wasn't that impressed. And I don't know. I don't know if it seems like I'm coming off as extra complainy today about this particular show today, guys. And I mean I feel like I'm getting extra strong with my complaints, but honestly, when I was watching this show, when I was watching this particular episode, I felt like it was better than it really was, honestly. And I think it was because of the great promos that were being cut by the Bloodline at the time. Not even
Yeah,
these promos, not even the ones with Kevin or Randy. Not even these were ones that really kept me interested. And maybe it's because I was just really, I am really into where the Bloodline storyline is going right now. And maybe I'm being unfair, but I don't feel like I am. I honestly don't feel like I am. I feel like most of the stuff that happened in SmackDown this particular episode was kind of filler, and the people that they are up on, I'm confused as to why they're up on them. So that's my biggest gripe about this particular SmackDown, and it's disappointing because the SmackDown before that one, I thought we were getting on the right path. Uh, I thought we were getting somewhere, and instead we got just an overall. So far, you can hear it, in our voices here. Overall, this was a pretty disappointing SmackDown, in my opinion. And had this not had Roman Reigns in it, honestly, or Jimmy, if it had just been like a bloodline thing, the current bloodline where they were doing something menacingly, and then the rest of the stuff was taking place, if everything else was the same, and the only thing that was different was that the new bloodline were the only faces that we saw, this would have been a shit can show. We would have been uninterested in most of it. So I honestly think that this show was held together by Jimmy, Jay, and Roman. That's just
Yeah,
my
held
opinion.
together and exclusively carried by, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Well, Lash Legend and Piper Niven, good match. Um, and that's about where it ends, really, as
yeah,
far as what was good in ring. Everything else was carried by promos, and most especially, it was exclusively carried entirely by the events and the promos involving Roman Reigns, Jimmy, and Jay, and the Bloodline.
yeah. And Motor City Machine Guns. I mean, you know what? I'm gonna be perfectly honest. What are they here to do? Um, I'm looking at the ages of these two men, and they're about ready. They're at the end of their careers here, like just based on the age, and we already know what WWE does with superstars, regardless of their physical condition, regardless of how well they can go in the ring. The age for them slows down what storylines they're gonna, or limits what storylines they'd even pick you for. So what will they be doing with the Motor City Machine Guns? I really would like to know. Uh,
I right at the moment I see only one thing. Someone in the back, maybe Triple H or somebody, really wet themselves over the idea of DIY versus the Motor City Machine Guns. That's why DIY won tonight, and that's why Motor City won tonight.
yeah,
And so that's the big thing. They want to see Motor City Machine Guns, versus
and
DIY.
I guess they're
Um,
trying to appeal to these people who want these indie wrestlers, but Motor City Machine Guns would not be the indie wrestlers that I'd want to see in WWE or AEW, to be perfectly honest. But
no,
what do I know?
they didn't
Maybe
cut it
there
in
were some.
AEW. That's why
Yeah,
they're here.
yeah, maybe there are some guys backstage there that are just jonesing to see these guys. Maybe 10 years ago, these guys were phenomenal, and the guys backstage there, they remember that. Now they want to see. I don't know. Whatever the case, I haven't seen much from Motor City yet, and I haven't gone back to look at any of their old matches past the one that I saw in AEW. Or I mean, maybe we've seen one or two in AEW. Whatever the case, it's all right. They won,
Yeah,
and we all now know that it was legit, only just to see DIY in a match with the Motor City Machine Guns. And I don't
that's
know
what I
who
suspect. Yeah.
I don't know who wanted that, but for me, that's like handing me applesauce. I don't like applesauce, but then you put ketchup in it. I definitely don't want that. So thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Table
You
flip.
were
Don't want this
if
shit.
if Motor City Machine Guns and DIY is someone's dream match, that is my nightmare match. Like that would
Yeah.
be the worst, most skippable piece of crap match in the world.
Yeah, if somebody
So
told me, "Hey, do you want to watch a match between DIY or the Motor City Machine Guns?" and I was like, "What is my other option?" and they were like, "You can pluck your eyebrows and eat them," I would start plucking and get to nomming. I'd be like, "Hey, can I saute them first?" No. Okay. All right. Let's go. Can I put them in bread? No. Damn it. All right. That's fine. I'll eat them. Let's go. That's how I
yeah,
feel about
so
this. So
I don't know who wants to see that, but
I hate you. I hate you for doing this to me. If you don't,
yeah, I this is not anybody's. I can't fathom how that would be anybody's dream match. It just
if
doesn't
this
make
is
any
you,
sense to me.
if this is your dream match, then I pox on you and I pox on your house because you're doing it. I pox on your eyes for making me watch DIY and the Motor City Machine Gun. Pop.
Yeah. Yep. And I don't think I have anything that could top that, so we'll leave it there.
I thumb my nose at thee. All
Not
right.
the nose thumb.
Yeah.
All right.
No.
That brings us to a backstage segment where Carmelo Hayes gets into a
Uh,
huge backstage brawl with Andrade El Idolo, in their perpetual eternal combat. I mean, we're coming into what is going to be, they call it game 7. Some of the analogies that like
Game
try to pair it
7.
as like a football analogy or a basketball analogy. Sometimes I'm like, you do realize you're getting in a wrestling ring, right? Like this isn't this is match 7, my friend. Um and it is exhaustive at this
Game
point.
7.
I mean, I can't tell you how not psyched I am to see yet a 7th in a really short period of time match between Carmelo Hayes and Andrade El Idolo. But here, in order to make United States champion LA Knight feel less irrelevant in this, they are going to have I believe he's going to end up being the special guest referee in that match.
Yeah. Because, reasons.
Yeah. So, and I think I jumped the gun because they split that particular set of nuggets of information into 2 different promos. So, at first, they bust out into a brawl, and then they stop it at the end of the brawl, and then later in the night, Nick is telling Byron Saxton that both Carmelo Hayes and Andrade El Idolo have been escorted out of the arena and they can settle their issues in Brooklyn next week. So, not even at a pay per view or anything, just next week. And LA Knight's going to be the special guest referee because somehow they are still trying to make that an angle for the Intercontinental Belt. But again, LA Knight feels like he's absolutely a third wheel and extraneous in this like weird sick love affair that Carmelo and Andrade have found themselves in. So,
You know what? This should
and
not be
even
called Game 7. They should call
even
this like Sisyphus times 2.
yeah, and even LA Knight comes out and makes the point. This is like, you know how when a show is criticized about something and the writers then write it into the show like somehow, haha, since we said it, you can't say it anymore. No, we can say it more, and it just makes it worse because you clearly recognize the problem enough that you wrote it into the show. LA Knight even steps up in that conversation and says, frankly, I don't know what I have to do with any of this, but if you want me to be the special referee, I guess I'll do it. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you have just stated the problem with this entire angle. And just because you said it doesn't mean that goes away. I'm glad they're aware of it. What are you going to do to fix it? Because this is the problem I'm having with that whole thing. Is that LA Knight feels like he's just been strapped on to this feud between
Oh,
Carmelo and El Idolo because they can't find him a worthy challenger or something. He's already beaten both of these guys one-on-one.
yep.
Who wants to see that again? Why are you doing this?
I don't know. Well, in this case, he's a referee now for some reason. And I don't know honestly. And you know what's gonna happen? It's gonna be a quote unquote game 8 because for some reason uh somebody's gonna have an issue with LA Knight being the ref. It wasn't fair. I'm
Yeah.
getting sleepy just talking about it. You know what I mean? I almost became a narcoleptic while I was completing that sentence. Like I'm just not here for it. Like
Well,
my head got heavy, my neck got weak. It's a
I
snooze.
mean, this just feels like it's the longest road to one more tired ass triple threat match for the title that we're going to get out of this.
If I
And
could watch
I,
Randy Orton go against LA Knight, and they gave me a good match, I'd much rather want to see something like that. I feel like LA Knight being champion right now, I feel like they're just squandering his championship reign, and this is boring. I don't know why they've dragged him into this freaking storyline. You don't have faith in these two superstars that you put together, then separate them and find something else for them to do. But bringing other superstars into this bullshit and then bringing their reign down. LA Knight has other matches that he could be in, man.
I agree. And you asked me not long ago, who would I put him in a match with? And I said with either the returning AJ Styles. This was before he got injured and
Yeah.
hurt his foot. and I also said Randy Orton. And
Yeah, you
hell,
did.
even Kevin Owens. But I mean, we've kind of seen that one before, haven't we?
Yeah,
So I would almost that pretty much brings us and whittles us down to it being Randy Orton. Like he's kind of the only one left now. I mean, unless
yeah,
the Bloodline decides that they have an eye for LA Knight's championship, and God help us, please don't, because then that championship will come off the shelf again as the Bloodline wins it and hangs
yeah,
on to it, leaving yet another prize for no one to fight for. So I really like all roads kind of lead to it having to be Randy Orton because there really isn't anyone left at the top of the roster for him to go against that would be worth bothering with. I mean,
yeah,
Carmelo and El Idolo aren't at this point. Again, he's beaten them both quite
yeah.
soundly.
That's why they've gotten these two paired up in a perpetual match with each other. But okay, cool. If they aren't ready for LA Knight, then why the freak is LA Knight still here with this?
Yeah,
Let's
I
get
agree.
him something else to do. You act like you don't have any other freaking superstars back there. You do. You keep forgetting about them. Or you put him in a tag team and then put him on a shelf somewhere. So, yeah, you got guys back there.
Yeah,
Bring
you're
them
not
out.
wrong about that. You're not, if I was going to have anybody else, like if it's not going to be someone at the top of the roster like Randy Orton, why don't you go into some of these tag teams that have been made? I think we could get a good match out of LA Knight and Austin Theory. We could get a good
Yeah,
match, a classic. I think we've seen it recently, actually, out of LA Knight and Grayson Waller.
yeah,
Um, why not have Montez Ford, since the suggestion, he as a singles competitor could do great. Why not
yeah.
have Montez Ford break away and try and get some singles gold here? Yeah, there's so many other options if you look into some of these tag teams that are basically two singles wrestlers that have been thrown together in the
Yeah,
interest of time, since
and
we don't have enough time to showcase everybody otherwise.
and why can't a tag team, somebody from a tag team go after a singles belt? That's happened before. Did not Xavier Woods just do the same damn thing?
He did. He
So
absolutely did.
what's the big deal, man? I mean,
Yeah.
I guess my long complaint, just comes down to why if they aren't ready for LA Knight and you want them to move away from it, then why do you keep including LA Knight into this brawl? He doesn't need to be in it until one of them eventually beats him. Come on. Come
Yeah, I
on.
mean, you just have them circle back time after time until maybe they win,
Just
because
circle
now it's
the
gonna
drain until
feel
somebody gets
awkward.
lucky.
Yeah, and since we've seen LA Knight beat both Carmelo and Andrade straight, I don't know what payoff is left to come out of this for any of them.
There
Um,
is like
if
honestly.
if LA Knight loses to one of them at this point, it'll be because they've each had like 52 chances. A point that was
Yeah.
made by Santos Escobar that Carmelo and Andrade seem to just keep having opportunity after opportunity coming their way. Why not Santos Escobar? I mean, so yeah, this is a really weird way to tie off like LA Knight from literally anyone else into perpetuity for some reason, and
Literally.
I don't get it. And it's tiresome for Carmelo and Andrade, I'm sure, or it's tiresome for us to watch. Like we've seen Carmelo and
Yeah.
Andrade going on the seventh time in a very short amount of time. So what's left for them to do to one another at this point? I mean,
I
Jesus.
have no freaking idea. I don't know.
And it doesn't make me optimistic when they seem to go to a four match format, and one of them is going to be, and I've said this before, so I'm getting tired of sounding like a broken record, but when one of those four matches is basically a repeat of last week and the week before and the week before that, like word for word, star for star, it's the same match. That's pretty awful,
Yeah.
honestly.
And it's unfortunate because it's something that we see often because like, I've mentioned that every wrestler has a move set, okay? Right? Like they all have a set of moves that they're going to do. Chances are you're going to see them do this move when they get into the ring. Tag teams are no exception, okay? That gets the same thing. But the same thing with like singles. Andrade, we know his move set. Carmelo, we know his moveset. We know what each one of them is going to do, and it's going to be pretty much the same thing each match. They don't switch up their move sets whenever they're in the, you know, that's not how that works. So we're about to see the same thing again for the what, seventh time?
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm
What?
completely lost with what they're trying to accomplish with that, other than making us really bored and tired of all three of those stars.
And they've basically
Um,
taken 8 moves, put them in a hat, and they just keep shaking the hat each time they
mhm.
have a match. And then they pull each move out and they go, "We're gonna do them in this order this time." And then I'm gonna try to get this move that I normally do from the left. I'm gonna try to do it from the top corner rope. Like that's it. That's all that's popping off here, man. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know.
And
Again, I
that
know. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
well, moving on from that,
Yeah.
we then come to the fourth match of the night, which is Naomi and Bailey versus Nia Jax and Candice LeRae.
Hmm.
And I had a hard time coming into this match because I just knew that like Candice LeRae is just going to be the downfall here in this match, and
Hmm.
it kind of was the case. Like, Naomi and Bailey were okay. Bailey, I think, it looked okay, and Naomi always looks pretty good, and Nia Jax, I guess, showed up. Um, and there really wasn't a ton of high spots to mark out about on this one. There
No.
was a point where Naomi had Nia Jax in the corner and she stood on her back and kind of tap danced, and that was funny. That was a pretty funny
Hmm.
moment. Other than that, the only other major thing of note is that when all three of the like Naomi, Bailey, and Nia were outside the ring near the entrance ramp, sorry, it can't have been that. But they I think for a little bit they were all out that direction, and then I want to say um let's see. Who was it that got pinned? I think was it Bailey?
Uh.
Yeah,
Gosh, was it Bailey?
I think so. I believe because the way it
Yes.
ended is that they
Yeah.
were all three kind of out that way for a brief moment while Candace was still kind of on the apron, and then one of them got tossed back in and started going at it with LeRae briefly. And let's see, they end up outside the ring. I think Bailey and LeRae um were outside near the announce booth, and Bailey did
Hmm.
something to Candace that knocked her face first on the apron. And then when Bailey rolled LeRae back into the ring, as she was getting back into the ring, Indy Hartwell drives Bailey face first into the ring post and then
Yeah.
tosses her back into the ring for LeRae to just hit like a springboard moonsault, a lion salt, essentially, to pick up the victory. And LeRae looked as freaking terrible as I expected she would in that entire match. Like nothing about her move set is imposing because she is 1 ounce big, so she can't really do anything other than these really low effort bullshit moves. And
Yeah.
she's just not of a caliber that I think deserves to be in the ring with Naomi, Nia, and Bailey. It just wasn't. It was a mismatch. Indy Hartwell would have done better, I think, or been at least a more better physical matchup than Candice LeRae. But for some reason, they decided to stick LeRae in there and then have her pick up the win. Like,
I can
it,
only I can only assume it's because she's married to the other champion of the night. Um.
Johnny
So
Gargano.
yeah, I can only assume it has something to do with that. Whatever the case. And I'm very confused why Indy Hartwell doesn't get in the ring as much as Candice LeRae does. Uh, Candice LeRae.
Indy,
First of all, I haven't seen either one of them in a minute, right? But the last time I even saw them, it was Candice LeRae in the ring. Like she was doing most of the matches then. And
yeah, and it
didn't
was
Indy
a
have a
whole.
belt in NXT? Like didn't she? Wasn't
Both
she
of them
holding the belt
did.
for a minute?
Indy
So what's
Hartwell
up?
was the NXT Women's Champion. Yeah, no, since Indy Hartwell has arrived on the main roster, they've had her playing big dumb lummox while LeRae is apparently the shifty, crafty one. And
I was so excited.
Indy was portrayed as this naive, stupid girl who wanted to be a good guy, and then Candice LeRae starts doing like bad guy shit, and then Indy Hartwell eventually gets on the page with the bad guy shit, and then they disappear for 1,000 years, only to
Yeah.
come back and be put in a match that just really didn't do anything for anybody. Like not only was it one more between Naomi, Bailey, and Nia, which we have seen ad exhaustion at this point, ad nauseum. And
Mm-hmm.
I say that with no diss on any of those women. I do like them, but we've seen this match over and over, with the exception the one piece you changed out was Stratton. He apparently had the sniffles, so Candice LeRae had to sub in.
Yeah.
And I don't know, this just was kind of a Lulu of a match. Like it didn't move the needle any. It wasn't particularly good, and the inclusion of Candice LeRae did nothing to improve it. And
Yeah.
whatever.
And at this
It
point, I think it's safe to say that Bailey and Naomi just don't look good together in the ring. I'm sorry, not Naomi. Bailey and Nia.
Yeah, I don't think Nia and Bailey mix that well.
Yeah, just like
Naomi and
oil and
Nia can
water.
do just fine, but yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. Bailey and Nia just don't mesh that well. I mean, it was with Bailey that she had the infamous Nia Karana that was stupid looking. So I don't know if those two don't communicate well or if they're trying to do too much. But by contrast, Naomi can have a hell of a match with Nia and have a hell of a match with Tiffany Stratton.
Yeah.
Um, so I honestly would have been here for like Naomi versus Tiffany Stratton more than any of the other competitors that were represented in this fourth match.
Oh,
And
for
this
sure.
apparently was the main event, and it was just a wash. I didn't. It was just a lame duck of a main event, to be perfectly honest.
Oh my God, it was the main event.
Yeah. So again, match of the night: Piper Niven and Lash Legend, and
My
it.
word, that didn't even hit me. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was the match of the night.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say before we started recording, was that in
Oof.
retrospect, this particular episode of SmackDown was carried almost exclusively by what happened outside the ring than anything that happened
Yeah.
in it.
Yeah.
Again, the exception of the night being Piper Niven and Lash Legend. That was a
Yeah.
legitimately badass match. That was a
Good
good
match.
match.
I agree. Wow. Yeah, right. Because right after this, we had we had Nick Aldis telling Brian Saxon basically what we've already talked about. Carmelo and Andrade will have their match. They've been escorted out of the arena, blah blah blah, and they were gonna settle their issues in Brooklyn next week with LA Knight being the special guest referee. That
Yep.
that popped up, and then they got into the whole reason that Friday Night SmackDown existed, and it was because Roman Reigns was about to do his acknowledgement of Solo Sikoa, and so
hmm
that basically the Bloodline storyline was how the night ended. Um,
Yeah, and
so
that part was really pretty good. I mean, I know I'm saying a lot about how the matches didn't carry this episode, but by contrast, the stuff going on with Roman, Jimmy, and Jay was very, very good. Very, very, very good. In
yeah,
fact, it was probably exclusively the reason to look at this SmackDown at all. Save again for Piper Niven and Lash Legend. Those two things I think I can identify as the absolute high spots of the night. It's just that Lash Legend and Piper Niven was the only in-ring action that was worth looking at. And the Roman, Jimmy, and Bloodline segments, including Jey Uso, was the stuff that really was carrying it. It was the through line for the night.
yeah,
And I I absolutely understand that Bloodline and Roman Reigns and whatnot is why people tune into SmackDown, but it's not often that I feel like it was exclusively the only reason to look. Like usually there's some other stuff going on that's pretty good. Like you had pointed out earlier, the past couple of weeks it looked like SmackDown was really bringing it together, and
yeah,
then this one was not so much that. I mean, if Jey Uso hadn't shown up and they hadn't done so much stuff with Roman Reigns, there would be nothing well, there would be very little to recommend in this episode, to be perfectly honest. But
yeah,
that said, the Roman Reigns and the Bloodline segments were very good, and so we come to the part of the evening where after hearing that Roman thinks that the only way to fix this is to acknowledge Solo, we're like, whoa, so is that what's going to happen here? And so he makes his way out and he says, Columbia, South Carolina, perhaps for the last time, acknowledge me. And the crowd pops, like all the ones come up, because now the tribal chief is super
Yeah.
over. And he
Yep.
said,
Yep.
earlier tonight, you heard him say to Jay that our family is stronger now. Or no, he says earlier tonight, I heard you told Jay that our family is stronger now. You told Jay that our bloodline was stronger now. I don't see it. I don't see anything that tells me we're better off now. If anything, we're divided and broken. After everything we've been through, everything we went through in the spring, everything we lost in the summer, we stand divided like this. Solo, I told my father I can fix this, which it has extra impact because Roman actually recently lost his father. And I don't know how many people knew or don't know that, but that was part of why that had the impact, or it should have had the impact that it did.
Yeah.
And he says, all I want to do is put us back on to the promised land. I want titles around our waist. I want paydays coming from the heavens. I want abundance. I want our family to be priority. Tell me what I have to do to fix this. And
Yeah.
Solo kind of sneers and laughs at him and says, what do you have to do? That's an easy fix, Roman. What you have to do to fix this? I'll tell you. All you have to do is acknowledge me. And Roman Reigns says, like he struggles with that for a second, but he says, okay, I acknowledge you. There, I acknowledge you. Does that make you feel better?
Mhm.
And Solo like sneers again and kind of says, no, Roman, that's not good enough. I need you to acknowledge me as your tribal chief. I need you to acknowledge me as your tribal chief or else. And Roman says, or else what? And Solo says, look at you. There he is. I knew it. You never changed. You always wanted this. Since you never changed, I'll never change either. And
Yeah.
then the blood, he supposedly snaps his fingers, but because of the like thumb wrap of ultimate wrapping, it didn't really snap. It just, you saw it, but you didn't hear it. And then the bloodline comes out dragging Jimmy Uso down the ramp, having been, I guess, pre-beaten up backstage.
You got
And
freebie.
then Reigns ends up ducking a clothesline from Solo and starts, pounding Solo's face in. And he throws Solo out of the ring. And he ends up dropping some folks with some Superman punches. And when everybody's down, he ends up grabbing the Ula Fala. And that's when Solo kind of climbs back into the ring behind him and then hits him with a low blow. And then the whole rest of the bloodline gangs up on Reigns and beats the bejesus out of him. Jacob Fatu hit him with an Impaler DDT, and Solo hits him with 2 Samoan spikes. And as the show goes off the air, you once again see Solo's bloodline standing tall over Roman Reigns. So it's another evening where Roman just gets to eat shit for, I guess, standing up for himself. And as storyline goes, this is really, really good because you've got to build up a good bad guy, right?
Mhm.
And that's what I feel like they're doing here by having the bloodline do what they do, and having Roman Reigns on the downswing. Like they've made it very clear that Roman could beat any one of these men. Hell, he could probably beat any 2 of those men on his own, but 3 or 4, that's where it starts to break down.
Yeah.
And so it's conveying this idea that the bloodline, even Roman Reigns, is as good as he is and as next level as he is, can't do it by himself.
Yeah.
And I think they're doing a good job conveying that story. And nobody is liking seeing Reigns on the downswing like this, like no one. And that's great. That's great because you're going to make it so much more cathartic when the good guy bloodline eventually does come back on board and they start whooping the tails off of Solo's bullshit bloodline.
Yeah.
So this is good. This is great storytelling. And on the whole, I have no complaints about that. Like, I mean, other than, well, I guess I can make a little complaint. I wish the Gorillas of Destiny weren't such a drag on this new bloodline because Jacob's fantastic, Solo is credible. It's just those two, they're
Yep.
they're just minions.
Yeah.
They haven't impressed yet. And I don't think that's the end of it. Like somewhere in there, we're hearing that like Hikuleo, who is another member of like, he's another Tonga, right? Um, he's going to pop in on the scene at some point, I'm sure. Now, on which side, I don't know. But if I had to guess, since he's another Tonga, it would be on Solo's side, which
Yeah,
means Roman's going to have some building to do. But either way, I'm here for it. That is what I came to see. And in closing, that part of the show was good. That
yeah,
said, my overall rating for this SmackDown is going to have to be a meh, because there were only like two things that were good. It was the Bloodline stuff and the match between Lash Legend and Piper Niven. If I were to say to somebody of this episode, I would say just skip to the parts regarding the Bloodline, which you could probably find on YouTube in a heartbeat. WWE's probably posted them themselves,
yeah.
and take a look at Lash Legend against Piper Niven. The rest of it you can flush down the toilet. Honestly, it
Honestly,
was it
yeah.
was no good. So this is definitely not top tier, not even close. And if I had to give it a numeric rating, I would say it's a 5 or a 6 out of 10, to be perfectly honest.
Mm.
What
Yeah,
about
okay.
you?
I think I would give this particular episode of SmackDown uh a fucking out of 10. It was
Wait,
just
what was that? It didn't come
it was
through. What was it
it
out
was
of
a
10?
fart. I made a fart noise out
Oh,
of
a
10.
raspberry out of
Yeah,
10.
it's
Okay.
just yeah, it's just I can't do it now. But it was a bleh. Um and the only thing that really saved this show was the storylines for the bloodline. That's it. And out of that it was legit because we saw Jimmy and Roman because they were here. Um
And Jay.
other NJ. Other than that, it was okay. There was one match out of the four that seemed to be worth or that was worth anything. Um, that's about it, man. So yeah, I don't. If I had to give it a number, I'd give it about a 4. And I know that's pretty low, but I mean the promos. If I was just giving the promos a score by themselves, the only promos that I was really interested in were the storylines for the bloodline. That was it. So all the other promos were like meh. Cody got up
That's
and
fair. Yep.
rambled incoherently for about 5 or 6 minutes. Uh,
And so did Kevin Owens after
and
him.
so did Kevin Owens after him. Kevin Owens unfortunately did so as if he had just taken some Tylenol PMs. So, uh, just not the only good thing as far as even the promos are concerned would have been the bloodline. So that's a 4,
Yeah.
man. That's a
No,
4. That's a
you're
4
probably
for
right.
me.
I may have been too generous. I just knew that it was definitely not it was not top tier, which is like an 8 through 10.
No.
But it could be anywhere. Like I would say it's fair to rate anywhere between a 4 to a 6. And
Yeah,
that's a
that's
6
fair.
would be on the generous side,
Yeah,
because
that's
like you
fair.
said, with very little exception, like the in-ring action, depending on what you watch wrestling for, I watch it because I like wrestling. That doesn't mean I don't like the promos, but I do want to see some good wrestling. And I really only felt like I got that out of one match out of the four. And
Yeah.
when you're only
Also,
giving me 4 matches, that is a terrible ratio. That is really
yep.
bad. You need to have all 4 of those, because I got to wait till next week for the next SmackDown. If only 4 matches a week, then those 4 should be absolutely ass kicking, and only one of them was. That's
True.
really bad. That
Yeah,
is really bad.
it
And you're
is.
right. The only bit of promo that was really worth anything was exclusively the Bloodline. So my rating will go from a meh to completely carried by the Bloodline. Like that is the only thing that you really would watch this episode for. I mean,
Yeah.
I recommend the Piper Niven in the Last Legend match, but let's face it, that was really what was worth watching was the Bloodline stuff. It was almost exclusively carried by that.
Yeah.
So
It's the truth.
it is unfortunate. The last thing I'll say is that it is unfortunate that after 2 weeks of it feeling like SmackDown had stepped up, that we're back to here. Ooh, That
Yeah.
hurts my soul because I do this because I'm a wrestling fan. I'm not in this to run wrestling and wrestling programming into the ground. My
Nope.
criticism comes from a place of knowing you can do better and expecting better as a fan.
Yeah.
Because I've seen you do it. You know, we know you can. And when wrestling is good, it's great. So that's where this all comes from.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I can't in good conscience make a recommendation towards this episode of SmackDown aside from what happened with the Bloodline and that match between Lash Legend and Piper Niven. That's it. Everything
That's
else
it.
was bad. Yeah, I mean, not like anywhere between meh to bad. So
Yeah.
that said, I thank everyone who has joined us for this episode. Again, our next episode should be covering AEW Collision from Saturday. And we hope that if you listened today, you'll listen then. And we'll see you there.
Bye,
That said,
guys.
yep, I'm going to go ahead and roll the outro.
I was early. Bye, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Top Tier Wrestling. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the latest AEW and WWE news and shows. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. Follow us on social media for updates and to join the conversation. Until next time, everyone, remember, wrestling is always better when it's top tier.